So thank you all for coming today. Thank you so much for the Claire Booth Lewis Institute for having me. I really appreciate it. I love speaking to young people because I really believe that you guys, not only are you getting it the worst and you're going to get it the worst based on what's happening, you have the power to change it. And you also have a lot more energy than I do. As we get older, we can all attest to that. For me, working on campaigns, starting off on presidential campaigns, starting off on the Hill, it really was about what I believed. And as long as you're doing the right thing and you have the right attitude, Bay was right. You can really do anything. It is a team atmosphere. And it was about this time, after the presidential elections, when New York Times, Newsweek, Time Magazine, they all declared the GOP dead, and they had determined that the young vote was completely ceded to Barack Obama. They said, that's it. He tapped into the young people. The GOP needs to give it up. Forget it. The GOP needs to pack it in and go home. Well, the GOP might still be slightly lost in the wilderness, but I'll tell you what, we're a lot better off than we were before, because we see now who's controlling this place in Congress. People ask me, okay, the trend now in politics, you see the GOP coming back, winning elections, and you hear liberals spin that this is an anti-incumbent election. It's not an anti-incumbent election. Well, sure, you have to get thrown out of Congress. In order to get thrown out, you need to actually be in Washington, D.C., or you need to be in state office. But that's not why people are getting thrown out of Congress. They're getting thrown out because they're too liberal, and people don't agree. You see, in Massachusetts, Martha Coakley, when she ran against Scott Brown, she ran towards the Obama administration, and look what happened. You saw in New Jersey, Chris Christie, who, by the way, GOP, take a clue from him. I mean, this is a guy who, we want the template for coming back. Chris Christie is the guy to go to. Makes no apologies, doesn't give you anything in soundbite, tells it like it is. And he went back to the principles of conservatism and small government, which a lot of Republicans forgot. And that's why he got into power. If you notice that Democrats, House candidates, even for John Murtha's seat we saw just recently, House candidates, Democrats are running away from what's happening in D.C. Democrats who aren't even in office are saying, well, I wouldn't be participating in what's happening down there. Prepare to see a lot more of that. I mean, how many conservative Democrats do you see now that are really shaking in their boots? Not many. How many Republicans are really shaking in their boots? Not many. And everybody is running back to the right. Why? Because the country's on the verge of going off a cliff. You guys are the only ones who can stop it. Because a lot of people around here in this building and the building next to it and the building next to that building, they've had their opportunity and they failed. And more now, you see a 35% more increase in people who have no political experience getting involved in office. I definitely think there's a leadership vacuum. I think that there's an issue now, and that's why people are finally paying attention. When I worked on Capitol Hill, I worked in the House Republican Conference, and we would push out talking points, and we would do press events, and we did whatever it takes to get the message across. And I always questioned, were people really listening? I mean, people are really busy, they're really distracted. How much does what we're saying down here really permeate? Well, finally, it's permeating. And everybody's paying attention. Your generation's paying attention. My generation's paying attention. Seniors are paying attention. And when they look down here, they see three big issues with what's happening with the people that are in office. One, hubris, arrogance. We passed a health care bill. Well, we didn't pass it, but they passed a health care bill, one that was overwhelmingly unpopular, one by a committee chairman who said that he didn't understand it and he didn't read it, passed by a Congress who didn't read it, signed into law by a president who didn't read it, that's going to be administered by an obese Surgeon General. What could possibly go wrong, right? Nothing. You see inexperience on so many levels, and that's been highlighted with this Gulf spill. So many came out and said, well, Sarah Palin doesn't have the experience. Barack Obama has the experience. Really? Does he? Because now it's on display that he's better off crafting, I think, policy papers, over at the White House scratching their beards, smoking their pipes, talking about intellectual things. But when it comes down to a crisis, when you really need them, when we need them now, they don't know what to do. And you see that what this Gulf spill has done has totally undermined everything that he's told us from day one. And that is that government can do everything. Government can take over healthcare. Government can run the banks. They can run car companies. Now, this week, hearings on the Hill, they're going to try and run the oil companies. That's coming. Do we really think that they can do it better than we can, than the private sector, than young people, than old people, than all people? No. His entire political philosophy has been completely torn to shreds because of the greatest disaster this country has seen since 9/11. Going back to how I talked about liberalism, that's the third point, that liberalism will never be the dominant figure in this country, I hope. I think that they try, but that's another reason why the party in power in the House and in the Senate and in the White House is failing. Hubris, inexperience, and liberalism. And you'll see everybody run away from it more and more and more. Now, I'm hopeful that liberalism won't eventually take over. I'm hopeful that we can fight these one-on-one battles on health care and cap-and-trade legislation and not raise taxes. But when I give speeches, I try and hit upon the culture, because I think there's plenty of experts out there that talk about different fields, and I'm not an energy expert and I'm not an economist. And we can fight these battles here in D.C. The parties can get in the weeds and fight over health care. We can fight over cap and trade. We can fight over regulating the banks or not. But the biggest fight, and the fight that matters the most, and the fight that you guys have to fight, is for the culture. As Mark Stein once said, how can we expect every 2 years people to go into a voting booth and pull the lever for a conservative or a Republican if the trifecta is controlled by liberals? And think about it, it is. The media is controlled by liberals, entertainment's controlled by liberals, and academia is controlled by liberals. I'm sure that many of you deal with it at your college campuses. And so you say, okay, well, how do we fight the culture? Because it's everywhere that we go. It's on TV, it's underlying messages in movies, it's in news articles. I mean, that's really the issue that's taking over, and it's even going down into our textbooks. So how do you make a difference here? How do you make a difference? Well, I constantly encourage the party to, rather than honor the conservative GOP senator from the South at the Columbus Day dinner, why not honor the filmmaker or the author? You know, people who are contributing to the culture in a conservative way. You know, as young people, we need to start to take over museum boards and start think tanks and maybe film studios. CPAC was great because that was all on display. Margie Ross, who spoke to you earlier, she's a prime example of a woman who is directly contributing to the culture by getting behind and sponsoring authors that contribute in a conservative way to push back among the default movement, which is liberalism. Now, again, I'm hopeful liberalism will never, never take over, because that wasn't the way that this country was designed. As much as they're trying to fight that now, we have to fight back twice as hard. You know, nothing is better than being right, and nothing is more important than fighting for what you believe in. But, you know, the most important thing is that you actually get up and do it, and you make a difference. And the reason that I do this is not because I get free hair and makeup at Fox News, which is fantastic, by the way, girls. It's because I truly believe in what I'm doing. And I get to come out and talk to people like you. And I get to encourage you to get into campaigns and get into Hill offices. And even if you decide you want to stay on Capitol Hill or you don't, there are so many ways that young people can contribute. There's so many jobs out there in this down job market. People ask me at CPAC, the under 30 crowd came up to me and they said, how do I get involved? I really want to do foreign affairs, but I don't really think I want to work in government. Or, you know, I'm just not really sure, you know, I like business, but I don't know what to do. Well, there's not a lot of business jobs out there. There's not a lot of jobs anywhere. But you know where there are jobs? In government. Government's only getting bigger. But there's a campaign every 2 years. Do you know how many people call me all day and say, I need somebody, I need a press secretary. I wish I had all of your resumes. I just can't wait until you graduate. You can send them to me. So it's important that when you graduate, you don't just limit yourself to think that you can get out and you have to be relegated to one specific field. If you like healthcare but you don't want to be a nurse, you can work on the Hill and you can work and specialize in health policy. If you love politics or if you love to write, you can go write for a conservative publication. Start your own blog. Start your own group at school. I mean, there are ways to communicate and contribute to the culture without actually running for office. And I think that's so important. And so I hope all of you will follow me, because when I jumped in, I was scared. But you know what? I worked really hard. I never said no to anything. And it opened so many different doors. And I'm telling you, the opportunities are out there specifically for young people, because most people who succeed in politics started off very young. And as Bay said, you earn their trust, and then they trust you with larger things. And because it's a team effort, and because everyone's usually working really thin on campaigns and Capitol Hill offices, the more you want to do, the more you want to learn, like she said, learn everything, the more you'll be given. And that's how you do it. You can leapfrog over your friends at college if you just take on more responsibility and you get involved in politics. That's a promise. And there's definitely a shortage of young people getting involved. And they just say they don't know how to do it. Well, hopefully you'll reach out and work on a campaign, contact your local congressperson, contact your local senator, and see how you can help. And even if it is, like Bay said, stuffing envelopes or getting lunch, you're going to meet plenty of people that will open doors. But don't do it for the glory, because it's not that glorious. Do it because it's right, and do it because it's your generation that's going to be affected, and your kids' generation, and my kids' generation. It's the way that this country flourished was because the way that it was designed, and it's under attack. So by design, it was supposed to empower us, and now that's being threatened, and it's up to all of you to fix it. And I hope that you will.